Hello everyone, I'm FARMERSIM and welcome to the first instalment in my guide to Autodrive. So in this first episode I am going to run through with you the basics of setting up an Autodrive network on a map. I'm going to run through a few of the menu options and just show you what they mean and what they do, and hopefully I'm going to give you a few helpful tips and pointers that I have learnt along my way so far with my journey with Autodrive. So let's get into it. So, upon first installation of Autodrive, once you have placed the Autodrive zip file into your mod folder and you start up a map for the very first time, you will be met with this message that we have in front of us. Should Autodrive generate a route network from the traffic and helper data on the map? Now, in this instance, Autodrive is pretty clever in that it can recognize the AI traffic splines that are, assuming they have been installed, on a map. So the essentially the route that the AI cars and trucks and whatnot follow up and down the roads, Autodrive will plot a very basic network along those lengths of road that the traffic travel on, which is great. That can save you, depending on the size of your map, that can save you a little bit of time in plotting those particular routes. But in my personal experience, I've found that they can be, they're not always perfect, and I shall jump straight into explaining why. So initially, I'm going to select yes for this one, and I'll show you what it does. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we are going to want to bring up the Autodrive heads-up display, and to do that, quite simply, you use the left Alt button on your keyboard and 0 on the right-hand side on the numpad. So pressing those together brings up the heads-up display here on the right-hand side. Now there are a handful of customizations you can do in the menu to increase the size of this for your display. We'll look into that in the near future. But the first and foremost thing that we're going to want to do is, if you look at my mouse cursor here on the bottom right of the Autodrive heads-up display, we have the triangular icon here with the exclamation mark. This brings onto your display the existing Autodrive network. So we click on that, and as you can see, it has brought up what Autodrive has plotted to the existing AI network splines. Now, straight out of the box, that isn't going to work. Now, those of you who are completely unfamiliar with Autodrive, the blue line represented here along both lanes is what's called a bi-directional route, or a two-way route essentially, so a vehicle can travel in either direction along this route. Ideally, this kind of two-way course, two-way network is suitable for much narrower roads, for example, potentially like the one we have here going off into the distance there, because of the width of combines and tractors with twin wheels, for example. If you are likely to have them passing each other along the road, if you've got more than one vehicle or job running at the same time, and they're likely to pass each other along a route like this, you're going to want it to be a bi-directional two-way course, as opposed to having a separate left and right lane, because it's a narrow road and most vehicles need a decent amount of space around them to move up and down that road. You don't want them to bump into each other. But that's obviously a little bit of detail for the future. As I said previously, that it doesn't always work out the box. This isn't going to work. For example, this lane here isn't joined to this lane here. So if our vehicle was on where that deer is there on the left hand side, and you wanted to send that vehicle from here to a destination up here, it's not going to work, because there isn't these two aren't joined together, and I know just from experience that it will follow its way up here, but these two lanes aren't joined together, so it just won't get there, and if you try to send it somewhere, it just won't work. It'll say this particular vehicle cannot reach this destination. So, which is why, in my opinion, it's probably best to start from scratch if you are setting Autodrive up for the first time. Now, I'm sure we've all experienced that lovely feeling when a new map comes out, or you're looking to get your teeth into a save game on your favourite map, and you're planning on, a good session on that map, and you like to carry it forward and play it for a long time. And if you want to use Autodrive and you want it to work properly, almost first time out the box, personally I feel it's the best approach is to start from scratch and plot that entire Autodrive network from the start. Now, it does involve a bit of time. I will say that straight off the bat. To create a good auto-drive network around any map requires a good chunk of time initially. Personally, what I've always done is, for example, when a new map comes out and you really want to get your teeth into it, I will spend the first several hours plotting out an auto-drive network. The benefits you get from that is when you are plotting an auto-drive network around a map, it immediately gets you familiar with almost every corner of the map, or every road at least, because you're required to drive your vehicle, a vehicle, around the map, recording the auto-drive network. Doing that means you get to see almost all 4 corners of the map, and you get familiar with it. So, we're going to come back out of this now. We're going to jump back into this map from the start, but I'm going to select No on the automatic AI network spline creation part, and we're going to essentially have an empty map with no auto-drive network at all. Okay, so we're back in the map, and we have absolutely zero auto-drive network plotted on this map. Now, I selected No at the very beginning, so autodrive did not use the AI network splines. So if I click again on what is correctly known as the edit mode button, that's what I should have termed it as before, so apologies for that, the exclamation mark in the triangle here. So we click on that. As you can see, no nodes appear on the road in front of us. It's called edit mode because this is the mode that you need to be in if you wanted to start recording, if you want to create or rename a target, if you want to delete nodes, if you want to use the route manager here, or if you wanted to edit a selected node. These are the things that come up when edit mode is enabled. Obviously, to do that, to get rid of it, you just do that. Click on it again. Now, with autodrive being, it is very detailed, and there's a lot of things to go through, and it is a bit confusing as to which order in which to do things. I'd very much like to, right now, before we go into anything, give you a quick rundown of some of the menus, the settings, for example. But in order for me to correctly explain some of those settings in there needs to be an existing network, or at least some part of network on the map. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to record a very simple up and down route from where we are here. I'm going to go right to the end of this road and right back down again the other side. Now, if I just very quickly show you the map, I'm down here at the very bottom here, and I'm essentially going to record a single directional route up the right hand side of this lane and come back again down this side here. That's essentially what I'm going to do, so that there is existing nodes on the map, and then I can show you what some of the menus mean in relation to all of that. But I am going to have to jump into one of the settings. So the cog here is quite simply the settings menu. When you click on it, it will bring you into the all the settings for autodrive essentially. Now I'm going to go through these, almost all of them, in a little bit of detail very shortly, but the one that I am going to alter straight away, if you click on the head icon here, this is the user settings, we have the option for the line height. Now initially this is at ground level. Now if you remember a few seconds ago when we created the AI network traffic splines version, the blue lines and the nodes were placed on top of the tarmac essentially. Now this is all down to personal preference. You're free to have them on ground level if you like them that way. I've always preferred to have them set to the above tractor mode. So if I click on apply now, that's the only setting I'm going to change right now, but I just wanted to make you aware of it. So line height, above tractor, click on apply, and you'll see the difference in a second. So, like I said, I'm going to record hopefully a relatively quick up and down section on this road. To do that, obviously the first thing we need to do is to enable edit mode again. So we click on edit mode, and the first thing we're going to use is the record button, quite simply. So if we click on record, the engine's not running, the tractor's not moving, we click on record, there we go. As you can see, that node is now directly above the tractor. So we're going to start the engine. Now, autodrive will record in this mode anyway, just by simply clicking on the record button. That is the standard method for recording a single directional route. Now, one of the personal tips the personal useful part of this that I've always used is dialing down the speed. I use a control pad to control my tractors, obviously. I'm fully aware that there are some of you out there who may be using steering wheels, and certainly some of you who will just be using the basic keyboard and mouse layout using WAS and D for your directions. And I know how sensitive the steering can be sometimes on various tractors and vehicles, depending on what speed you're going at. The faster you're going, the more sensitive and the quicker your vehicles will change direction. Now, I've always liked, again, this is a personal thing, I've always liked when I come to create an Autodrive network to try and make it as neat and tidy as possible without too many zigzaggies throughout the, if you're running a straight road, for example, without too many left and rights, basically, trying to make it as smooth as possible. So what I've always done, I always record my Autodrive networks somewhere between 10 and 15 miles an hour using the cruise control. So I'm just now dialing my cruise control down to say 12 miles an hour. Record is on. So we're going to go forward. There we go. And as you'll see, it starts to create the green line. Now this is, as I said before, this is very simply single direction, as you can see by the green arrow, the green line and the green arrow pointing in the direction that we are heading. Now, I'm doing 12 miles an hour. I know this might seem a little bit painful, but because of the sensitivity of the steering, like I say, I always like to try and keep the lanes nice and straight. Now, if you are on a map that has arrow straight roads, for example, there is a quick way of doing this, and I've found, and that's using the GPS mod. If you attach something like a small mower to the front or back of your vehicle and set up a GPS course, but manually dial down the width of that course to something quite narrow, like half a metre, you can use GPS and Autodrive when you're recording to make an arrow straight directional route, if that makes any sense. But I have always found that even though the roads look perfectly straight, they're not always perfectly straight. They might vary by a few degrees, so eventually as you get further up the road they start to veer off and not be a perfectly straight line, if that makes any sense. So anyway, right, so I'm going to we're going to get this done. I know this looks painful, don't get me wrong, but this is how I've done all my Autodrive networks, and it does work. Just for my OCD, I suppose it is. You are free, as I say, you know, you can put your foot down. We'll just do that right now. You can put your foot down, and I'll give you an example. So say, for example, there was a slight kink in the road here, and you kind of, you know, you end up going a bit like that, just trying to correct your direction. Do you see what I mean? And just because, you know, I'm sure we've all got a little bit of OCD here and there, I like to try and create an arrow straight road where possible. So we're going to crack on with this, and I shall pop back in a second when we've got an up and down lane recorded. Right, so just finished recording essentially a very simple up and down route along this this particular piece of road. Now at the end of the road, as you can see. So when you come to when you finish recording the section that you want to record, quite simply click on the record button again, and that will be the recording stopped, and then you're free to move about. Always try and make a point of remembering to stop recording when you've definitely finished recording, because if I'd forgotten to stop recording then and then reversed round as I did, I'd have started creating nodes as I reversed this, that and the other, and then I'd have to delete them. So just speaking from experience there, I've done that so many times, forgetting to stop recording. Right, so now that we have, let's just turn the engine off actually very quickly so I'm not talking over that. Now that we have essentially a very simple route created on this piece of road, there's now a few. Essentially, there was one of the menu options that I needed some existing nodes on the map to be able to show you. So anyway, let's jump into the settings now, and I shall show you what some of them mean. I'm not going to go into too much detail in all of them, because it is. I appreciate that it is. It's very complicated. There's a lot to take in. I appreciate that, and there's a lot of things at the minute here that we don't really need to address. So, anyway, first and foremost, we're in vehicle settings. Now, at the very top, you are met with the first setting, which is corner speed. Now, this is the one, I suppose, that you're going to want to essentially adjust a little bit. Obviously, it's pretty straightforward. This is the speed, the percentage of the maximum speed of the vehicle that that particular vehicle will take corners at. Now, you don't really want a tractor and a trailer that's got several tons of grain in a trailer taking any type of corner at full speed, especially things like, you know, like a 90-degree corner left or right. You don't want it just winging it round. So what I tend to do, again, this is personal preference, I tend to dial that straight away down to somewhere between 60 and 70. For the purposes of this demonstration, we'll put that down to 65. Things like the pipe offset, distance from combine, unload fill level, field exit and stuff, this is all about its behaviour in fields. We're not going to address any of these things just yet, because at the minute I'm just showing you how to record a very basic course around a map using just the road systems. There's nothing really here that we need to address at the minute. The next option down is user settings. Now, GUI scale for the Autodrive heads-up display. In this option, this is where you can change the size of the heads-up display. So if I dial that right up to 200% and click on apply, as you'll see there, that's just increased in size by 200%. This is obviously all down to your personal preference. I tend to always have that set to default. Let's move that back to where it belongs there. So back into the settings here. Notifications. Now, this is where Autodrive will bring up a message in a box on the screen when a vehicle has completed its task that you sent it to do. So say, for example, we want to send this tractor from here to our farm, assuming that that was plotted on the map and included in the Autodrive network. We would send that tractor from here to there. When it reached there, you'd get a ding on the screen, and it will bring up a message on the screen saying this particular vehicle has reached this particular destination. You can you can have that set to default. You can have, this is essentially referring to the time that it's displayed, obviously, so you can have it set to ultra long, extra long, endless, so it doesn't ever disappear, or you can have them as disabled. Again, for the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to keep those set to default. Display help box, I don't think I've ever had to change that. Show next path. Now, I always have this set to no, but when you have it selected to yes, again, when you send your vehicle on a job, send it from destination A to destination B, as it's making its way along the route, you will see a white line in front of it with an arrow. That's essentially what that show next path is. It's just essentially a little white line that sits in front of your vehicle, telling you which direction it's next going to be heading in. Again, personal preference, I always have that set to no. I've never really understood the benefit to having that. It's just an extra thing on the screen that, you know, doesn't really need to be there. I showed you before about the line height. This obviously just determines whether the Autodrive nodes sit above or below the tractor. Personally, again, I just found it more helpful to have them above the tractor. Tooltips and markers, we keep everything here as default, switch to markers. We'll go through a few of these things in a future episode in a bit more detail. Add settings to HUD, essentially that brings a few more boxes onto the heads-up display that we don't really need to worry about right now. Wide HUD, again, personal preference. If you click on yes and click on apply, that turns the HUD into this, so I suppose it allows it more suitability to sit in the centre of the screen perhaps. But again, personal preference, I've always just had that set to no. Sound, this is again, it disables the clicks and the beeps that you get from Autodrive when you interact with it. For the purposes of this, again, we will keep that as yes. And the thickness of the connection lines, again, I've never had to change any of these settings, so we don't need to worry about any of those. Right, in the settings, this next icon down here, the settings for Autodrive, there's a lot of things in here that for the purposes of this demonstration can add a bit of confusion into things, so we're not really going to go into any detail in most of these. The one that I am going to change is Auto Connect, and this is the main setting that I felt I needed to have an existing network on the map in order to show you. So at the minute, if we just come out of here, we jump back into edit mode so that we can see things, see the nodes visible. Now what auto connect does, and this again, as in the Courseplay tutorial, there's a lot of personal preference here. I find the auto connect setting to be a bit annoying, I suppose I can put it simply. So at the minute, auto connect at the start is set to yes. So if I click on record here, there you go, as you'll see, it has automatically connected to the nearest node here. But there's no that doesn't necessarily mean that the particular course I wanted to start recording, as I hit record there, meant that I wanted to start from this node. So if we turn auto connect off, or to no, and click on apply. Now let's just delete that one and start again. So if I now hit record again, as you'll see, it has brought up a node above the tractor, but it has not automatically connected to the nearest node. I have always preferred having that option set. I just find it's much more user-friendly, and it gives you the freedom to join up to whichever node you actually wanted it to start from, and not the one that Autodrive thinks you wanted it to start from, i.e. the closest node. Right, so let's remove that again. So back into the settings. So that's that. Yeah, I've always had, personally, I always found it's much easier to have both of these set to no. Now the next one down is driver wages. This is essentially how much you're prepared to pay your Autodrive drivers as they run around your map, running jobs for you. Obviously you can pay them 100%, 250, 500, 1000% if you're feeling super generous, or you can pay them 0 and anything in 50% increments all the way up. So for the purposes of this, we'll keep everything at 100%. Collision detection. Again, I've always had this set to no. There's a couple of options here. You can have it set to, there's a setting for FS19, which I'm assuming is just it's using the settings that it used to have in FS19. You can have it set for FS22 or no. Now forgive me, I don't fully understand the differences between FS19 and FS22 in that respect. There is one reason mainly why I always have collision detection set to no, and I'll explain that in a second. Use folders. This is how Autodrive can organise, or how you are free to organise your destinations in the Autodrive heads-up display. You can either have it as, if you have it set to no, every market that you create, for example, my farm, a farm silo, a sell point, they will just appear in a big long list. If you select yes to use folders, and we click on apply, within this box, this drop-down menu, as we start creating waypoints on the map for the Autodrive network, you are free to organise them into folders. At the minute, we don't have a single waypoint on the map, so there's nothing really to demonstrate here, but essentially, when use folders is activated, it's this green circle here with a plus sign. We can create folders, so we can insert a folder name. For example, if you had a big farm with multiple waypoints to do with that farm, you could essentially create a folder for your farm and have your farm silo, your cow pen, your workshop, all this kind of stuff. You can have all those waypoints organised into that folder. You can have a folder for all the fields, for example. Again, that organisation is entirely down to how you prefer to organise things. For the purposes of this demonstration, we're going to just turn that off for now. We'll go into a bit more detail about using folders potentially in a future episode. Now these other settings here, again, I've never really needed to change any of these whatsoever, so we're not going to change those because I don't want to make this more complicated than it needs to be. Right, non-functional settings, this next option down here, which is signified by a weather symbol. There's only a few options here, and it's essentially how it governs the use of lights, turn signals and beacon lights and hazard lights. The turn light option here, it's by default it's set to 0, and by maximum you can set its numerical value up to 160. I have always assumed that this numerical value in here relates to the angle of a turn. This is essentially the behaviour of Autodrive and what it does with indicators. So if you have, for example, if we turn this up to 90, I have always understood that to be that if your vehicle is going to be turning at 90 degrees or more, it will use the indicators, because obviously if you're wanting to try to be even remotely realistic, you want your vehicle to use an indicator if it's turning right or left, but you also don't want it to necessarily use its indicators as it's just gradually going around a right-hand bend instead of a right-hand corner at a junction. So I've always kept that turn light automatic setting somewhere between 80 and 90. Again, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't alter the use or the function of autodrive. It's just how it visually behaves and how it uses the indicators. So for doing this, we'll set it to 90, and as far as I'm concerned, as far as I've always understood it, like I say, it will only use the indicators if it's looking to make a 90-degree corner or more. Beacon lights, again, yes or no, whether you want the autodrive workers when it's running to use beacon lights or not. And again, quite simply, work lights when it's in a field or unloading a combine or working at a bunker, yes or no. Again, I've always tended to just keep those by default as yes. And also hazard lights. I think this is a relatively new addition to autodrive in one of the last couple of updates. I've actually always dialed that off to no. Again, personal preference. It just means it doesn't use the hazard lights as it's driving down the road. So, and I've never had to change this setting here, remaining drive time. So I'm confident that you can just leave that as it is. So once you've made any changes to the settings here and you're happy with them, you can click on apply. This setting here for debug settings, I've never had to go into any of these things. I've been using autodrive now since the day it came out for FS22. I've never had to go into the debug settings in here, so we can essentially just avoid that. And again, in the experimental features settings, I've never had to do anything really with the operation of any of these. So once you've made any changes to any of the settings that you like to make in any of these boxes up here, once you've done that, click on apply, and all those changes will have been made. Okay, so next up we're going to talk about corners, recording corners, and we're going to place down our first waypoint. Now on this map, where we are here, this area to our right, where we can see these two NPC tractors and this auger, this is actually the shop. So you buy a vehicle, you buy a trailer, this is where it appears. So what we're going to do, I'm going to record a very short route from this side of the road here into the area that's on this map called the store, because now and again you may want to send a vehicle back to the store to be fixed or to do something, or to pick up a trailer, of course, that you just bought. Right, now the characteristics of corners can be very different depending on what vehicle you're in. If we had a very small tractor, for example, and a very short trailer, the way that behaves around a corner can be very different from the likes of what we have here, a relatively large trailer, or even bigger. For example, if we were running a truck, a lorry with a big 40-foot, like a Wilson Pacesetter trailer, for example, that kind of a convoy is particularly long and will behave entirely differently into a corner. Now, the one thing you don't want to happen, obviously, if I'm not going to record anything here, but if I just drive forward, and I'm sure we've all experienced this at some point, if you take a corner wrong, if I, for example, recorded just a simple turn right into here and didn't think about the angle of the corner, our vehicle there, I mean, okay, we made it there successfully, but we're very close to that fence. Now, not every vehicle is going to be that successful, even though we have a trailer here that has an element of rear steer on one of its rear axles. I'm just going to show you what I feel to be a relatively foolproof way of recording a course that could hopefully suit most vehicles or implements, trucks, trailers, whatever. So, the first tip, I would say, from my own personal experience, is when you are recording a turn into a destination, start reasonably far back, because as we all know in real life, a tractor with a big trailer like this, or as I said before, a lorry, it would essentially want to swing out wide to the left here and then make the turn in. It wouldn't just come straight down here and just turn right. It would need a decent amount of room. Now, I know small tractors and small trailers don't need to behave like that, and this is all down to essentially, I guess, what tools and implements and vehicles you are using on your particular map and on your on your particular save. But as I say, if you don't really know what vehicles you're going to have in the future, if you're starting a farm with relatively small equipment and plan to build up that equipment and get bigger and bigger and bigger, the more money you earn, but you want your Autodrive network to essentially work first time out the box, or hopefully work first time out the box, we're going to try and create each turn to suit, hopefully, everything. So, as I say, start a good few nodes back from the junction that you're looking to turn into, and start, as I say, a few meters away from a particular node. So what we're going to do, we're going to hit record. Again, as you'll see, it brings up the node, but because we have got auto connect turned off, once you've hit record and that node is just sat on its own, it's up to you to join that node to the node that you want it to start from. So in this instance, it's this node here. So we're going, so essentially the vehicle will come down this route here, from here. It will hit this node here, and then recognise that it now needs to follow onto this one here. And the way to do that is you click on each node individually from the direction you want to set it. So if I click on this node first, and then this node, you see the arrow that it's brought up here, and the direction that it's following. Click on that node, and that we're now creating a route in that direction. If, for example, you wanted to, I'm just going to stop recording here on that one for a second just to show you what you can do. Firstly, you can if you hold the right mouse button on a particular node, you're free to move that around wherever you need it to be. And also, you can also remove that directional arrow, and you need to delete it in the direction that it's following. So if we wanted to remove that green waypoint, that green direction, basically it's heading that way, so we delete it that way. So we just click on that one again, and as you can see, it's gone. If we wanted to change its direction to go from the other way around, you click on this node here, then click on that node there, and it changes the direction in which the vehicle will follow between those two nodes. And again, if you wanted to make this particular one a two-directional route, you then go back again, and it changes it to blue. And again, you're free to remove those as you see fit. So again, for the purposes of this, we're going to we'll delete that node and we'll start this one again. But I just wanted to show you what you can do, how you can interact between particular nodes. So as you can see, if a node is created and it's not joined to anything, it has a red X displayed above it. And again, the red X symbol here in the heads-up display, that deletes it. So as long as if you see the red line there, that is I suppose the marker that displays which node the tractor is essentially closest to. Click on delete, it will delete that node. Right, so anyway, forgive me, I just wanted to show you that little bit. So recording a corner. So we're gonna click on record. We're going to join this node to that node there, and we're going to start moving forward. But as I say, being mindful of the fact that this is quite a long convoy, what we're going to do, we're going to kind of swing out quite far to the left here, as you'd expect something like this to do in real life, and then we're going to come in like that, and it just gives a good chunk of room either side of your vehicle and its trailer to allow room to come in. So essentially and because I'm aware of the layout of this particular area here and where it spawns the vehicles when you buy them, we're going to essentially create a little loop in and a loop out. So we're going to drive round in a bit of a circle here, like that. I'm going to follow it around here like that, and then I'm going to come round here like that, and we're going to come right back out again and back out onto the main road. Now of course, because we're coming out here, and essentially most of our directions and routes are going to take us to the left, because that there is the edge of the map, so you can't do anything with all that. So essentially every direction we ever take out of this sell point here is going to be going to our left. So we're going to want to join up this direction here that we're currently making to the other side of the road. So quite simply, we'll come out and try and keep it as neat and as smooth as possible. That's one of the main keys with Autodrive, is to keep the angle of your steering routes as smooth as possible. So now we're happy with that. Essentially it's going to be straightening itself up to hit the main road there. We now click on our last icon there and click on the one we want to join it up to there. There we go. And then, as I said before, don't forget, hit that record button so we're no longer recording. So now essentially what we have is a bit of a loop in and out of there. But we don't have any waypoints, so there's still nowhere to send the tractors to and from. So if we go back into the shop area here, and we can pick any node we want, but ideally it's going to be one that we consider to be well into the area. So we're going to choose this one here. So as you can see, the little red line that joins from the tractor to its closest node, that is the node we are now going to call the shop. Quite simply, you can call it whatever you want, of course, but for the purposes of this, we're going to call it the shop. So that's what this icon here is. This is the more you use Autodrive, you'll get familiar with these this shape thing. This is less like a pinpoint or a waypoint. So we want to click on that, which is going to be corresponding to what we're going to call this node. So we click on that, and we'll call the target name, we're going to call it, quite simply, shop. Boom. So we hit enter, and there we go. As you can see, the word shop has appeared below this node, and now we have our first waypoint set on the map. Now you can see your waypoints that you have in the Autodrive heads-up display here. If we click on the drop-down menu, we now have shop. So we can now send a vehicle to the shop, assuming that all the Autodrive network is joined up together and can lead us to that. So I'll very quickly demonstrate that to you and show it working. So if we need to come out of here, I suppose we don't need to, I just need to move it a few nodes further away. But for the purposes of showing it you in action, we will essentially very quickly just spin it round here. Right, so sat on the road here. We bring down the drop down, click the drop down menu here, highlight shop. Now we're in this mode here, which has the symbol of the road. Now you'll have to please forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, that the Autodrive initially is a very complicated, and there's a lot of settings to discuss and to show you. So there's a few things obviously that I need to go into regarding what all these mean, and I will do that ASAP. But essentially, if you're looking to just send your vehicle to a destination without tipping, without filling up a trailer or anything, this is the icon you want, which is just essentially drive. It's got the icon of the road. So we've got the shop highlighted in our waypoint directional box here. We then click on this icon here, which is essentially go. We click on that. It is now finding its way to the shop. And what you'll also see here is the reduction in corner speed doing its thing. So there you go. It's successfully made its way around here, following our little network. It will get to the shop, or almost to the shop. There we go. And there you can see an example of the notifications that you can either amend or turn off. You get that little ding. It says driver of 6250, which is this tractor, has reached its destination. So that is essentially a very, very basic guide in how to record the first few nodes on your course and how to create a waypoint on one of those nodes. So what's next? So Autodrive does have built into it a very helpful corner creation function as well. You can just manually do it like we have just done, creating a turn into the shop area. But take for example a situation like this where we've got what could essentially be a little bit of a busy crossroads. We've got two lanes going left and right here, and we've also got two lanes going what would essentially kind of be north and south here. So I've just recorded a little bit of a short course here, heading in that direction, and on this side, coming back towards us in this direction. So, as I say, you are free to manually record this. So, for example, say we were on this this highway here, and we were going to record a course from this node here, turning left and heading up in this direction here on this side of the carriageway. Instead of doing it manually, driving the vehicle and recording as we have just done, what you can do is using your mouse. If you say we wanted to record from this node here, we wanted to join, sorry, this node here to this node here. You can essentially, if you click on this one, and you'll hear the beep to recognise that you've clicked it. There you go. And then you click on, then you don't click on it, sorry, but you just hover over it. Now it's difficult to see, but if you can just see that's cutting across the corner of the field there, there's a green line. You can see we're essentially joining these two nodes together. But before you click on it, if you were to click on it, that would essentially create that straight line. But if you just hover your mouse cursor over it and using your mouse wheel, your scroller wheel, and just roll it back towards you, you can see now we're creating a bend. So once you're happy with the layout of that bend, you can then click. There we go, and it creates that corner. Now, whether that corner is going to work for you or not, that is yet to be determined, because again, it's down to what vehicles you're using, whether you're using lorries, short tractors, short trailers, big trailers, whatever. That's yet to be determined, and it's a case of essentially running it and testing it. But for all intents and purposes, we have created a now usable route for Autodrive to send a tractor from somewhere in this direction to a waypoint that is essentially up here somewhere. And you can do the same for the way back. This does make the creation of, as I say, crossroads like this relatively easy to create. So we're gonna create the same again from the other way. So the vehicle will be coming down this way. So we click on that node there and say we're going to want it to turn left. So we now hover our mouse cursor over this here, and using our mouse wheel, we then, there we go, we can create a kind of a turn there. Now in my, yes it works, yes that will work, but in my mind that isn't really going to work that well. Ideally what you want is you want your Autodrive network to come up here, and you want it to take a wide line out onto the left hand side of this carriageway and back into the right, as I think that would ordinarily be the case in real life. A long convoy, for example, like a lorry and a big 40-foot trailer, won't take that line. It may well work, don't get me wrong, it may well work and it may be fine, but personally, if I was going to do it manually, I'd have recorded coming out, swinging out slightly to the left here, taking it wide out into the other carriageway and back into the right hand lane here. I do hope what I'm saying is kind of making sense. Aside from putting it into action with a different vehicle, it's difficult to demonstrate. But I'm speaking from my own experience here, having done this quite a lot on a lot of different maps throughout Farming Simulator 22. I have found that it is best when creating big corners like this, especially if you're likely to use a long vehicle like a lorry or a tractor and a long trailer, to have vehicles swinging out wide, because essentially that's what would happen in real life. I know a lorry driver would try his best to make this corner, but there is always going to be a strong chance that that particular vehicle is going to need to encroach onto the opposite carriageway. Now this is also a little bit of a problem, I suppose you could call it, if you have traffic enabled, because if your Autodrive network does encroach into oncoming traffic, obviously if you have traffic enabled, there's a 50% chance that as that vehicle is performing that turn, it may well bump into oncoming traffic, and that is something that can happen quite frequently with Autodrive if you're not careful. If you want it to run perfectly and not have anything to bump into, of course, you can always just turn traffic off. It's entirely down to you. Again, I have found it, quite honestly, it can be quite difficult to make Autodrive run successfully 100% of the time when you have traffic turned on. For example, as well, if I was to be running, if I was to want to send a combine harvester from one destination to another field, say on the other side of the map through the Autodrive network. Combines are massive, they're really wide, and I don't think there's a combine in the game that will sit neatly within the width of the lane of this carriageway. So there is always going to be a risk that it's going to bump into some oncoming traffic, potentially. It's not always the case, don't get me wrong, sometimes you can be lucky and it'll work, but I'm just saying it's something to be prepared for. Now what I'll do here, I'm just going to... We've done 2 corners there using Autodrive's built-in corner creator, but I'm just going to create another corner here, just setting it up in the way I would personally do it, doing it manually. So we'll line our tractor up with a node there. We'll click on record. We'll join those 2 up together. Now where taking the line that I feel vehicles would take would be, as we did before, swinging out wide, taking a nice gradual turn into the corner, and then joining back up with the route heading in the direction you want him to head to, if that makes any sense. But either way, as we've just displayed, there is a built-in corner creation tool for Autodrive. So I think now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through with you here just a few more pointers on what these icons mean in the heads-up display here. You know what, before we get into that, I just thought I'd demo it and put it to the test. And as it happens, it seems to work quite well. So I'm sending this lorry down to the shop. So it'll be turning right here, down our created network. And for all intents and purposes, it makes that corner perfectly fine. It does go out onto the opposite carriageway, and we're quite fortunate that it doesn't collide with anything on the corner of that junction. Now it's back onto the highway. It's heading where it needs to go. So that's actually worked perfect, and that's using the built-in Autodrive corner creation tool. So that's really quite good. So I suppose, you know, it's down to personal preference. It is down to the particular map that you're playing on. We're very fortunate on that particular corner at that junction. It's worked quite well. There is always going to be precedent to potentially take the advice that I gave in respect of creating a manual corner that turns out much wider into the oncoming traffic and into the junction that you're looking to turn into. There is always going to be precedent to consider that, depending on what map and what the design of the road you're currently trying to use is on. So I suppose for the sake of it, while we're here, we'll just watch it, see if it successfully makes its way into here. Now we did go out wide, turning into here. Oh, there you go. There you go. There's an example of it not working. Or it is working, and it isn't working. So it has collided with the fence. It has collided with that tractor. It has made it, I guess, essentially. You could call it that. You could call that successful in inverted commas. But that's not as successful as you'd like it to be. So in that respect, in that particular instance, you would actually want to try and design that corner out even wider. Because we now know that a lorry, if you were to use a lorry, doesn't neatly make that corner. So it needs to come out essentially even wider and come in even tighter there, I suppose, to allow for the length of the trailer. Right, anyway, I just wanted to demonstrate that to you. I thought that while we've created that and while I was talking about using trucks, I suppose when it comes to Autodrive, a vehicle like this, a 40-foot Wilson Pacesetter trailer and a lorry, a truck, they're the most awkward users of Autodrive when it comes to the longest convoy. These and harvesters. Harvesters can be a bit annoying as well, but we'll go into that in a future video. Right, anyway, let's crack on with what we were initially planning on doing. I'm just going to run in and show you a few of the different buttons on the heads-up display. Right, okay. Let's go through a few of what these buttons mean. Now, I've increased the scale of the Autodrive HUD just so it's a bit clearer for you all to see. Right, so initially, as I said before, this icon here is that represents the road. That is literally just the simple send a vehicle from point A to point B, or to send it to somewhere on the map to do something in particular. It's just to send it there. That's what that one does. So assuming we had multiple waypoints on this map, for example, field 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., or a sell point, or a silo, or your farm, or anything of that nature, you would click on the drop-down menu, select from the list that would appear here from all your waypoints where you wanted to send it to, and click on go, and it would go there. You click on this icon again, and it brings you to the next one, which is the pick up and deliver section. Now, this is a very handy piece of Autodrive. Essentially, let's just pretend, for the sake of it, that we have our farm silo has 40,000 litres of wheat in it, and we wanted to sell all that wheat using a 10,000 litre trailer and send it to a particular sell point to sell it. Assuming that all of those waypoints had been set up in the Autodrive network, we would have this box here, as you can see, the arrow indicating into the trailer, so that's where it would fill from. So this would be your farm silo. You would then be telling it to tip. That's the icon to tip, obviously. That you'd be telling it to tip at the particular sell point you want to tip to, and in this box here you would have whatever crop it was, whatever product it was. For namesake, it would be wheat. So you'd have that set up like that. Click on go, and it would essentially run from it would take itself to your farm silo if it wasn't already there. It would automatically fill up with the product that you told it to. In this case, it would be wheat, and then it would make its way to the tip point and tip it and sell it. So that's very clever. Now, this icon here is as you can see, when you hover over it, if you look in the blue box at the top of the heads-up display, it highlights what it is. So in that case, it's the increased loop counter. If you just left it as it is now, it would just keep on doing it. That would essentially just be infinite, essentially, and it would keep on going until the silo was empty. If you had 60,000 litres in your silo, for example, when you only wanted to sell 40,000 litres of it, and you knew that your trailer, being a 10,000 litre trailer for numbers' sake, so that would only require 4 trips, you would essentially change that to 4 by clicking on it 4 times, and that means it would only run that route 4 times, selling 40,000 litres of the 60,000 litres that you have in your silo. Does that? I hope I'm clear in putting that across to you. I hope that makes sense. You can reset that just by clicking up, and it goes to, I think, as I say, it's just a single figure thing. It gets to 9 and then goes back to default, which is just infinite, essentially. So that's that. Yeah, that's the pick up and deliver. Click on it again, and that is simply the tip function. So say, for example, we had a trailer hitched to the back of this, and it had anything in it, whatever. It could be 10 litres, it could be 10,000 litres, it doesn't matter. You would just essentially send it to a tip point, and it would take itself there and tip, quite simply. The next one is the load function. Now, this is very useful if you are running Courseplay. Now, this is something that we will go into in a future episode of this Autodrive set of videos. Again, let's pretend that we are in a field and we are running a lime spreader, and we all know that lime can run down very quickly from a lime spreader. Say we're spreading lime in a field that has never been limed before, and we know that we are going to have to use multiple hoppers worth of lime and needing to go back and fill up. Assuming the Autodrive network is set up as it should be, quite detailed, essentially what you would have is in this top box here, you would have whatever field it was working in. So say field, just for the sake of it, field 1. We are liming field 1. So assuming field 1 was connected to the Autodrive network, we would have field 1 in this box here. We would have the fill point for the lime in this box here. We would have lime selected from this drop-down menu here, and using the combination of Autodrive and Courseplay, it can run a course in the field using Courseplay, and you would have this icon clicked here so that Autodrive and Courseplay can recognize each other and take over when they're empty. It will essentially run. It will get itself to its emptying point in the field, it will stop. Autodrive will take over. It will take itself to the waypoint that you've created for, in our sake, field 1 here. And then it will take itself to the fill point, fill up with lime, go back to the field, and then Courseplay will take over again. And it will carry on like that until the job is finished. So that's a very, very handy thing to have as well, because I know that, again, using liming as an example, that is a particular job that can take multiple returns back to the fill point, or, you know, if you've got a silo with lime in it, or a lime buy point nearby, that is something that you can need to go back to multiple times. So that is very helpful. The next one is the all wonderful unload combine section, which again obviously we will be exploring that in a future episode. That is the unloading combine function. So we will have the, you know, whatever field we're working in, you know, field 1, 2, 3, whatever, and the tip point that you're taking your grain to. Now that could be your farm silo, that could be a sell point if you're selling it directly. Either way, it's that's essentially what it is. And as long as the field number here, again, for number's sake, it would be field 1. As long as that matches the same that would be in the combine harvester that you would have on your map, that will run perfectly. Essentially, the tractor and trailer will keep itself at field 1. It will unload the combine harvester, and then once it's full, once the trailer is full, it will then take itself back to the waypoint of the field, and then take itself back to the tip point, whether that's a silo or a sell point, and it will essentially loop around like that and carry on unloading the combine until the field is done. So that's essentially a very brief rundown. Now, don't get me wrong, we're going to go through all of these. I'm going to demonstrate all of these particular things in future videos. I'm going to show you how all of them work and put them to the test, and just show you them working properly. In this with this episode being essentially a very basic beginner's tutorial, just to essentially setting up the Autodrive network, essentially, and just trying to, you know, give you a few pointers and tips in how to set a few particular things up. We're not going to be going into anything like that in this episode. But this icon here, this is moving on to the next target. And again, we'll go into a bit more detail as to what that does, essentially. Right now, we don't need to worry about it. This is the park vehicle box. So as you can see there, if you click on it, driver of 6250R, no parking destination has been assigned. There we go. You can assign a parking destination for every vehicle on your Autodrive network by selecting it under a node, essentially. And again, that's something else we will go into in a future episode. We don't need to worry about that, but I'm just giving you a quick rundown of what they are now, just so you've got a very brief understanding of what these buttons do on the heads-up display. Right, what I think I'm going to do now is I am going to... I think this is our farm. Do we own this farm? I think we do. I'm just going to see if this farm has a silo, because what I'd like to do now is just record a bit more of the network. Assuming this place has a silo. I think it does. It does. But they might be a bit difficult to deal with, so I might actually place down a typical silo that, you know, one of them ones with a drive over grate, with a fill and tip point essentially in the same place. I'm going to include one of those into the network, and I'm going to show you essentially the basics of setting up a fill and tip point at a silo. Right, so I've very quickly just recorded a little bit more of the network along that road there from the crossroads, and what I have done is I have butchered a perfectly good field of wheat there, I think it is, and I've placed down a silo and created a bit of an in and out route into that silo. Now this is obviously entirely custom to this particular area of land, and I'm sure you'll be able to familiarise yourself with what it'd be like on the particular map you're working with, whether it's a silo that already existed on the map. The principle stays exactly the same. So what we're going to do, we're going to record part of the network now that's going to turn left into the silo here, and I'm going to show you a couple, or essentially one main pointer and tip when it comes to marking out where you put your silo, tip and fill point. So as before, we click on record, we join up from the node that we want to lead from, and I'm going to go relatively slowly here. So we're going to turn left nice and smoothly into there. I haven't done any landscaping there on that bumpy bit, so forgive me there. We're going to follow it into the silo. Now be mindful again of the particular vehicles that you're working with. If you are like me and are quite partial to a twin-wheeled tractor, and you happen to be using one of those to run grain cart and to come and tip at a silo, just be mindful of the width and the distance that you're keeping from the obstacles either side of you. In this case, we're alright, we've just got a typical tractor. So essentially what we're going to do, we're going to run the network past here. Now you see there, now that we've hovered over the trailer over the tip point, the message has appeared in the bottom of the screen there, that it's now registered that we can tip our wheat here. But I'm not going to create the node that we're currently connected to. I'm not going to turn that one into the waypoint, and I'll tell you why in a second. Actually, what I am going to do, we're just going to carry on a little bit further past, and we're going to go for that one there. So we're a little bit further on from the silo tip point, but we are going to, using this icon here on the heads-up display, you are free to do this while you were recording, of course. We are going to create a waypoint, very simply, farm silo. Click on OK. There we go. And let's carry on recording and join it back up to the network. Now I'm only going to do this, I'm just going to join it back up to our right hand side direction, but obviously if you wanted to do this, if you were setting this entirely up properly, you would have a direction that comes from here, turning right and joining back up to this lane, and you would also have one coming out here, turning left and joining up to that lane, so that regardless of where you are on the map, in order for it to work, you will be able to send the vehicle in and out of the silo successfully without it not being able to make it. So let's join these two up here. There we go. Stop the recording. Right, so the reason why I have set the farm silo waypoint a slight bit further on than where it was is because of the way that Autodrive approaches and connects to the waypoint, essentially. So if I had called that one there you go, that waypoint there, if I'd have called that farm silo, as you send a vehicle to that waypoint, it doesn't get to it there and calls itself done. It kind of stops early and gets to about anywhere from like there to there away from that particular waypoint, had that been the one that we had labelled as farm silo. So if we'd have then assumed that was correct, called that farm silo, and then programmed from a job that this tractor was going to hit here at this silo, it would get to this waypoint and it would stop, but it wouldn't do anything because it still hasn't hit the trigger, because it needs to go a bit further on. Hence why we have programmed this waypoint here to be the farm silo, because Autodrive will automatically detect, it knows when it's driving over a tip point or a fill point, and it will slow down accordingly. It knows that its destination is a couple of nodes ahead, so it will slow down, and it doesn't have to get to the exact node before recognizing that it's going over a tip or fill point, and it will perform its job and do what you've told it to do, if that makes any sense. So but essentially the long and short of what I'm trying to tell you is, when you are setting up an Autodrive network regarding silos and all tip points and all fill points, whether it's a production point, whether it's a sell point, whether it's your own silo, always make sure that you factor in a little bit of forward-thinking distance in front of the point. So make sure that you take into consideration the length of the trailer that you have. So for example, if we were using that big red trailer that we had previously that was much longer, the register point at the back of that trailer would be even further on. So potentially we would have that farm silo waypoint maybe here, or even potentially here it would still work, because Autodrive would recognise that it is driving over a tip or fill point. I do hope that makes any sense. That's one of the most important parts of getting the basics of an Autodrive network. And when I say the basics, I'm referring to driving around the map, finding its way to different destinations, and tipping and filling at a silo. That's what I consider to be the basics. So once you've got that firmly understood, because I've made the mistake so many times where I've set the waypoint, and I still do it now. So even though I've used Autodrive for quite a long time, it's still very easy to just miss it by a couple of meters. So the tractor will get to the waypoint, and it's only a couple of meters away from the actual trigger. So it'll just sit there. So until you've adjusted it so that the tip point and the register point of the trailer match up, and the waypoint is a little bit further on, it will then work perfectly every time. So let's put that into demonstration. So let's come back out of here, and let's, from here, we need to make sure that we can access it from this side as well. No, in fact, no, we'll go down here and we'll turn around and we'll just send it that way. So spin it round. There we go. There we go there. Now then, we want to bring up this is the deliver option. So we're just sending it to a point to tip. We're going to send it to the farm silo, and we're going to click on OK. As you can see there, it comes up in the blue box of Autodrive there. It's telling us we've got about 12 seconds before it's going to hit its destination. So it hangs a left, it follows its way round. It should start to slow down any second there. There we go. It's slowing down. It's registering in its mind that it knows it's coming across a tip grate or a fill point. And there we go. As soon as the trailer matches up with the tip point of the particular silo or point that you're sending it to, it will do what you've asked it to do. That's excellent. And the same principle occurs there for whether if you're sending it to pick up from this particular waypoint as well. You would have a different function enabled here. It would be essentially it could be either this one or the pick up and deliver, this one here, to come here, pick up that wheat that we've just put in there, or pick up anything that's in that silo and go between the different destinations. So that's that. Okay, so now I really do hope that there is now an even slightly better understanding of how to start setting up an Autodrive network on a map within Farming Simulator 22. I've shown you essentially how to hit record and what to do with that, and how to negotiate a corner and a bend at a junction using either the manual plotting of the route or the built-in corner creation tool, as I call it, from built into Autodrive, and also the very important tip about making sure that when it comes to tip points, to make sure that you set the waypoint several meters forward from that point to make sure that it will always work first time when you get there, whether you're tipping or filling up. Now, the next thing is essentially with that knowledge, that very basic knowledge, you are now free to go to the map, whatever map you're playing on, and now go and record a course around that particular map. But before we do that, before you go ahead and do that, the other thing that I just wanted to show you, another pointer that will become important, because I think every map has a combination of these roads. Excuse me, sunshine. There we go. Right. Now, this road in particular that we're on now, this is more of a lane, isn't it? And essentially you wouldn't expect tractors to be passing at either side. This is what would be considered a single track road, isn't it? And I'm sure every map within FARMERSIM has got several iterations of this. So previously, when you're hitting record, we're gonna join this up to the main carriageway eventually, but just for now I'm just going to show you how to record what I showed you at the very beginning of the video. What came up with the auto creation from the AI network is the two-way course. So bringing up your mouse cursor, instead of clicking record with your left mouse button, you now want to click record with your right mouse button. And what you'll see, there we go, it's now brought up a purple dot with an arrow pointing in both directions. That is essentially, that is now going to be recording a two-way course. So, initially, you don't see any difference because it just brings up a red dot and you don't tell any difference from the single node there. But if I'm just going to engage cruise control, but as you can see now, we are now recording a two-way course, highlighted by the blue line with no arrows on it instead of the green line with a particular direction on it, pointing in the direction that the vehicle you're in is heading. This is the best option for recording on a single track lane like this that is narrow, and that, as I said before, the likelihood of vehicles passing on either side is almost zero, isn't it? You just wouldn't have it on a road like this. So this is how you would set up a two-way course on a narrow lane. Now, I've set up courses, for example, Calmsden Farm, or even Court Farms. In fact, a lot of Court Farms is set up with a two-way course because the roads are so narrow. The main road is obviously back and two with the green lines, but I seem to remember Calmsden Farm was entirely two-way courses because every single route was a single track, which was it was great. It was different. It's something, you know, it wasn't the same typical layout that we'd always been used to. But yeah, that's essentially how you record and set up a two-way course. So I'm just going to do it up to there for now because there's no real reason for me to carry on. So I'll hit record again so that we are not recording as we move back, but I'm going to go back to the beginning of this two-way course. We're going to essentially just join this up to the main carriageway, so that if we were to ever use this part of the network, any vehicle we send up or down this route is able to join back up to the main carriageway. Now, that's obviously one of the main important parts of making sure that your Autodrive network can and will work every time. So we're going to do the quick and easy way here. So we're going to create a corner. We're going to go from that node there to that one there, and we're going to make a nice steady turn there. That's perfect there. We are now going to do one that turns left. So we're going to go from that node there. I think we might choose that one there, actually. There we go. Let's take that right out. Stay there, I'd say. Give or take a bit. Yeah, that'll do, I reckon. There. And we also want to do the same, but coming back the other way. So what we might want to do is actually move the tractor forward a bit. There we go. Let's just make sure that we can still see the nodes that we want to see. So we're going to go from this node here, and we're going to go to that node there. There we go. So we've now got an in from that direction, as it were. And we also want an out, don't we? Which other way? No, that's the one. We want to go from this way into it as well. So in fact, we'll just go from that one. We'll click on that. We shall click on that. And there we have an in. So now, from this main two-way carriageway, this main road here, we now have an access point. We essentially have an entrance and an exit point from both directions, and likewise coming out of this lane. So it does look very complicated. It's a complete mess of Autodrive nodes. But we now know we have an out going right, we have an out turning left, and we have an in turning right, and we have an in turning left. So essentially, that is how you make sure that each junction is covered for turning in any direction and getting to any point on the map. So I know we only have, I think we've got 2 waypoints on here on this map, haven't we? We've got the farm silo and we've got the shop. I know that we can't access the farm silo from here because we don't currently have a right turn into it, but we can access the shop because that should work. So if I click on there, oh, there you go, look at that. And why can't you reach the shop? That's interesting. That's just made me think, hasn't it? We've definitely got a way out here, I'm sure. You should be able to access the shop. Yeah. Right, so that's odd. Why didn't you work? There's something obviously wrong with this, isn't there? It might have been to do with the way I might not have clicked on the right one. Oh no, that worked. Well, there you go. There's a bit of a glitch that I haven't really encountered before. It works from that node. There we go. Yeah, see, it does work. Strange. Anyway, right. So, it's now down to you guys on your individual maps. I'm going to stop that now and just bring it to a halt for the sake of it. Turn it off and jump out. So yeah, I feel after this introduction, I do appreciate that this video has been quite a few minutes long. So I feel it has been quite straightforward and quite simple. There is a huge amount to take on board with Autodrive. There's a lot of settings and a lot of functionality of it that, if I was to try and include it in one video, it would be hours long. If it was to be any kind of useful video for you to go into any detail of all the different things you can do with Autodrive, it would be a massive video. So hence why it's being split into 2, 3, 4 videos, perhaps a similar thing that I did with Courseplay. So yeah, so you now know how to set up a basic course on a map using the record functions. If you left click with your mouse button, that will record a traditional single directional course. If you right click onto the record button, that will record a bi-directional course, a two-way course. And using the built-in corner building function of Autodrive, or a manual creation of a corner, again, entirely specific to what vehicles you're running on your map, whether you're running small tractors or big lorries, that will be entirely dependent on how you set up those corners. But as I said before, be mindful of how tight a long lorry can turn a corner and bump into lampposts and signposts and stuff, so be mindful of that and consider swinging out to its opposing side to allow for as much room as possible for that vehicle to make the turn. Yeah, that's essentially, in my mind, what I would call the absolute basics of Autodrive. Now, obviously, in the next episode, we are going to go into things in a bit more detail. I'm going to show you the different... let's just jump back in here so we can see the menu there. We'll get rid of the nodes, so there's not too much to look at. Yeah, I'm going to go into the different functionality of these things. We're going to have... we will no doubt be on a different map that has a complete Autodrive network set up. So I can show you the difference in what these jobs do. Now, obviously, as well, forgive me, I forgot to mention, obviously, I know we have essentially just... I've showed you how to set up a course down the main roads, and obviously how to do that as well on a little lane like this here that we have to our side. Essentially, you want to do the same thing for every part of the map that you have access to, and that involves field access points as well. So using that same principle, taking a feed off whichever lane is running alongside your field, take a feed off that route and take it essentially to the edge of the field. You don't need to go right into it, but as long as the Autodrive network runs up to the edge of that field, create that waypoint for that particular field and create an in and out point if it needs it for both ends of that waypoint. You will then have access to each field as you create it along your Autodrive network, and essentially have access to it from every direction, if that makes any sense. And in the next episode, as I say, we're going to go into a bit more detail into all of these different bits and bobs here, and finishing off with, I think, what is Autodrive's pièce de résistance, which is the combine unloading, working in the fields, and, you know, taking from a combine and putting it into a silo or taking it to a sell point. It's awesome when you get that up and running. So I think I'm going to call it here for this video, everyone. I think it's been long enough, and I do hope I haven't baffled you or waffled on for too long about, you know, repeating myself. I know I tend to do that sometimes, so I do apologise. But I do hope you found this introductory video to Autodrive even remotely helpful or interesting, or that you've even learnt even the slightest tip from it if you are familiar with Autodrive. But yeah, so I'm going to call it here. If you are new to the channel, and you have liked this video and you found it even remotely helpful or interesting, or you've even learned one tiny thing from it, and if my voice doesn't annoy you too much, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting the like button on the video if you have liked it. Leave me a comment if you've got any suggestions for me, and I shall see you all in the next installment of this guide to Autodrive. Thanks for watching, everyone.